Hey folks, welcome to the channel. The other day we took out our Supra, and when we got home we had that snail trail going underneath the car, and it was the coolant. And my head immediately turned to things like water pumps and stuff like that, but it turned out just to be the upper radiator hose. So today we're going to show you how to change out your radiator hose if you spring a leak or it blows. Now we're working on this car, but this is the same for pretty much any car you're going to work on. So let's go over to the car, I'll show you what happened. The upper radiator hose is this guy right here. It's the hose that comes from the radiator and goes to the engine. And there's a little pinhole leak right in there. And I actually couldn't find the leak until I got the car warmed back up and it started spraying out. So there's only a few things you're gonna need for this job, and I've got them laid out over here on the ground. You're gonna need, of course, the replacement radiator hoses. Now you see here I have two, and I'm actually going to replace the upper and the lower because when the upper goes, I'm pretty sure the lower is not far behind. So you do need those. Now these are specific to this car. You can also just get universal radiator hose. I've got a link for that in the description below. You're going to need some sort of a catch pan to catch your coolant because this stuff is not good for critters to eat. It'll actually kill them. So we do want to trap the coolant that we're taking out of the car, dispose of it properly. You need the correct coolant for your car. Now this car takes the regular yellow coolant. If you have a GM vehicle, it might have that orange stuff. Subarus are blue, Toyotas are orange. It kind of depends on the vehicle, so make sure you get the right coolant. Now you can also get coolant that is concentrate, that's what this is, which means you have to add 1 part coolant to 1 part water. Don't use water out of your tap, you want to use distilled water. You can also get 50-50 premix coolant, so you don't have to do that. And I've got links for different kinds of coolants in the description below. The one other thing that is worth mentioning is your radiator cap. You are going to be removing this, and when you do all this work, you definitely want to make sure your car is cool. Do not do this on a warm engine. So when the radiator cap comes off here, there are seals on the underside of the radiator cap. And check those. If these are starting to go, you might as well replace this while you're at it too, while you're picking up all the other parts. And I've got a link for radiator caps in the description as well. Now the next step is going to depend on what kind of car you're working on. This car is a lower car, so I can't just get underneath it with all this stuff, so I did have to jack the car up. If you're working on a truck or something taller, you may not have to, but if you do, make sure you jack the car up correctly, and that means putting wheel chocks behind the car so it doesn't roll back, even if your brakes are set, before you jack up the front of the car. And you also then want to place jack stands underneath either side in case the jack goes wrong. You don't want this whole thing falling on your head. That's not good. So let's get started. We got the thing jacked up. Now we're going to go underneath the car and show you how to drain your radiator. So now we're underneath the car and we found the radiator drain hose. And this hose comes off the bottom of the radiator, and there is a little thumb screw up there that does unscrew. Now almost every new car that I've worked on, or newer car that I've worked on, has got one of these, a drain and a screw there that you can just unscrew and let this drain out. So we're going to drain it into that catch pan that we talked about so we don't lose any coolant. And make absolutely sure you retighten that screw, because if you don't, when you go to refill everything later, you're going to pour it in the top and it's going to come right back out the bottom. Ask me how I figured that one out. So make sure that is totally tight. And a tip, while you are draining it, go up top and take off, if you haven't already, your radiator cap. That'll allow air to enter. This will drain a lot quicker. So once you've got that tightened back up, now we can go and start removing our old radiator hoses. Now your radiator hose is going to be held in usually by hose clamps. So it's this one right here and that one down there. In the case of these ones, and everyone is a little bit different if you've got manufacturer ones on there, they usually just loosen up with a screwdriver. You want to get that hose clamp nice and loose and get those out of the way. We're going to go into that lower one, loosen up that lower hose clamp. So with those out of the way now, you can go in there and start wiggling your hose loose. And sometimes these are kind of corroded on in place, so you might have to get underneath your hose a little bit just to loosen that guy up. And then you should be able to start wiggling the thing out. So there's the top, and you can see that's actually pretty corroded. I'm going to take some time before I put the new one on. We're going to clean up these ends, and then when we get the new ones on, it'll be nice and clean, and you won't have all this corrosion getting back into the system. So now with the upper hose removed and the corrosion cleaned off, they don't look great, but the corrosion's gone. You want to get rid of the loose stuff so it doesn't get back in the system. We need to install our hose, our new hose. Now I'm going to give you a couple pointers here. The first one is make sure before you put it on that you put your hose clamps over the hose. It makes things a lot easier than trying to loop them around later. And start with the lower first. And that's because if you do the upper, these can slide off and fall, and then you got to go find them. And then the last one is if you have any trouble getting it on there, get a little bit of coolant. You can just steal some out of the radiator and get it right on the inside of the hose there, and that'll help slip it over. So now we've got the lower one in place. Got a little bit more coolant here. Get it on the upper one right there. And now we will slip the upper in place. So now with both of those in place, we can move our hose clamps to where we need them. And you want to bring the hose clamp not to the very edge, but between where the hose ends and where the lip of the radiator, or in that case, the thermostat is. So there we go. Now we've got our upper hose in place. We're just going to repeat the exact same process on the underside of the car to the lower hose as a preventative maintenance, and then refill this thing, burp the system, and we're good to go. All right, now with all that work done, our last step here is to fill her back up. So we're going to throw the funnel on in there and grab one of our jugs of coolant here. Now remember, this is 50-50 mix, so we are going to have to mix coolant and water together in this. So we're going to slowly start adding. What we'll do here is we'll add about half of this container, and then we'll add some water. So we've filled the system to the point where it's really not taking any more air here. And people talk about different ways of burping their systems. This is my favorite way of doing it, at least on this car. I just put my whole hand over this. You could also just put the radiator cap back on. Put your hand over it, grab your other hand, and grab this hose and start squeezing it. And it starts pushing the water around the system. And what that does is it starts forcing the air bubbles through the system to come back up to the surface here. And when you're at that point, if you release, you can see here if your fluid level is topped up all the way or if you need to add more fluid. With the radiator cap back on, I'm going to drop the car back on the ground. We're going to start it up. We're going to check over the whole car to make sure there aren't any leaks from the hose that we just put on. And then we are going to make sure that our overflow tank has the correct amount of fluid in it. And we're going to make sure that the radiator is topped up. Now, if your engine is hot or warm, you do not want to reopen this while it's hot or warm. You want to let the engine cool down before you pop this back open. So far the car looks free from leaks, everything is looking good, so we're all done here. So if this video helped you out at all, give this video a great big thumbs up, go down below, smash that subscribe button, because I've got lots more good stuff coming your way. And of course, thanks for watching.